A Jayhawk is very much a fake and imaginary bird. However, Kansas basketball is very much for real.
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? Welcome to this Saturday post-game live. NC State falls in the Phog at the hands of the Kansas Jayhawks, 75-60. This post-game live is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, NC State travels all the way out to Lawrence, Kansas, and, I mean, you can see it behind me. This place is absolutely incredible. I'll start with that. This very much feels like the mecca of college basketball. Obviously, Naismith, who invented the sport, was Kansas's first coach. The moment you walk into this building, you feel like you are in college basketball history. It definitely helps out that their team is good every single year. NC State found out the hard way today. I mean, you get into the game, you start this game down 15-0 at a blink of an eye, cannot score. That was, virtually the whole story. NC State was perpetually down by 7 to 11 points for the entirety of this game. They showed a lot of fight, but in the end, it just was not quite enough.
I mean, if you take away the 15-0 start, we're in overtime right now.
Yeah.
But you seriously cannot start off like that. They started off the game looking like they were seeing ghosts. They were very jittery. There was no offensive execution. And we saw a team that improved in some ways that we needed them to. We saw a team that got better in some ways where it's like, hey, we need to be better at this. But then there are other ways where, you just are who you are in some regards. And so this is not the outcome that you look for. But there is the positive of, again, outside of that early start where you just look completely and wholly unprepared, you did play a good enough game to where you were applying pressure, you were cutting the lead down, you were getting in that area where it's like, hey, this is a competitive game, despite what the score may say. The only problem with that is it starts to feel like we know who this team is. Yeah. And beyond that, winning 5 games in 5 days is not a sustainable model for like, hey, this is how we compete. This is how we win ACC championships. This is our path to victory going forward. It's just not. So, there's things need to get better here. Luckily, this is not a conference game because it doesn't put us behind in that kind of search to not have to win 5 games in 5 days anymore. I like the fight of this team. I like that they did not roll over. I just did not like the way that we came out like deer in headlights, letting Kansas get whatever they want. We knew Hunter Dickinson was going to have a big game. We knew he's the biggest player on the court. He's going to be the biggest guy on the court, and he's going to dominate on the boards, which he did with 14. But it was just like, again, it's never about the other team. Even in basketball, where we're not the most talented team, what do other teams do to stop you from making free throws? What do other teams do to make it so that your offense is stagnating to the point where we just see Jaden Taylor constantly being asked, Jaden Taylor, Marcus Hill, and Dontre Styles to some extent constantly having to dribble the ball out. What are other teams doing to create that? And again, if there's no greater example of this, we trailed Coppin State because we came out unprepared. The second worst team in all of college basketball. They are so bad. We won that game by double digits, and their net rating went up. And yet we trailed that team coming out. So it feels to me like Keats has to find a way to light a fire in this team and say, we have to start fast. We cannot continue with these slow starts because you can get away with it against Coppin. You can get away with it against some of these lower tier teams. You definitely are not getting away with it in the fall.
I think it's really discouraging, and this connects to a lot of what we talked about during football season, that this basketball team, their identity seems to be having no identity. And, when you can't establish who are your consistent bucket getters on this team, obviously it appears to be Marcus Hill and Dontre Styles. But I think when you look at the supposed leaders of this team, and that would be Jaden Taylor and Michael O'Connell, You got virtually nothing from them in this entire game. And you're never going to go on the road to a place like this and expect to win when your best players can't be your best players. And I think we talked, last week or whenever it was, when we played Texas, even when Michael was not knocking down the shots, he still found a way to impact the game in other ways. Couldn't really do that today either. There were several costly turnovers, just bad decision making. And I don't know, maybe he's just in his head right now, but it's been a little bit of a worrisome couple weeks for Michael O'Connell. Ben Middlebrooks, on the other hand, was probably the best player all day for NC State. And maybe that comes as a little bit of a surprise, being that he had to go up against Hunter Dickinson in the paint. I would love to see those two scuffle, by the way. That flagrant foul with Dickinson, Middlebrooks, that would have been something if Ben retaliated. But we're glad he didn't. Ben Middlebrooks, he gave us that spark. And we talk so much about the Benergy. That is probably like the most valuable thing that we saw in this game moving forward. Because I do think, even though you lose this game, and this was the fourth and final big non-conference opportunity that we had, the fight of this team, even in a loss, that will project well into ACC play. I do believe that, because when Middlebrooks can be this consistent in ACC play, that's going to translate to a lot of really big, large impacting performances. You're not going to see Hunter Dickinson in ACC play. You're not. No. When you have Ben Middlebrooks and what he can give you in the paint, whether that's drawing fouls or just stirring it up, he stirs, I was going to say an S word up, but he's really good at doing so. He gets to the line. He gives you a lot of, auxiliary offensive opportunities. So I love
auxiliary, but you were close. Auxiliary is very close to auxiliary. You're all right.
I love what we got from Middlebrooks today. Brandon Huntley Hatfield, he had like the quietest 12 points I've ever seen in my life. I still need more from B2H. He just isn't quite as physical as we need him to be. And so, wrapping all this up into one idea, this team's identity is not really having an identity. And that in itself is very concerning moving forward.
We're also seeing a carryover from something that we saw in football. Link it back to an idea that you said there with some of the similarities you're seeing with football. Our seniors are not showing up and dominating. We're not seeing our seniors. The question right now, what's going on with MOC? What's going on with MOC? We don't know.
Yeah.
It looks like he's got a case of the yips. Grace is a baseball guy, so he's very familiar with that. But it looks like he just cannot get out of his head at the moment. It looks like even executing the most simple of tasks, things that last year we were like, oh, yeah, you can count on MOC for that. It's been a struggle. It's been tough. And then beyond that, I'm going to say this, and I mean this from a very genuine standpoint. If we are going to continue to see MOC perform like this, I need more Breon pass minutes at that point. I need more. Because, and granted, this is the one game where I will say, hey, listen, you got to tip your hat to DeJuan Harris Jr. He had our guards in hell. Them boys, I said, oh my God, this is not good. This is not good. But in all seriousness, he applied a lot of ball pressure and made our guards uncomfortable all night. With that being said, you still have to find a way. You still have to find a way to get good ball movement. You still have to find a way to say, you know what plays can we run to get him out of the play? What plays can we run to make Harris a non-factor defensively, as opposed to allowing him, again, when you do that dribble out the ball style of offense, you leave one of the best defenders in the nation sitting there waiting on you like, oh, what's going on here? You have this one-on-one matchup just for me. It's never going to work out for you well. So, again, when I walk away from this game, I walk away from this game excited about the fight, but terribly disappointed in the start. Terribly disappointed in the start. And, again, knowing who this team is, it was a better shooting night from deep. 40%, can't ask for much better than that. Sure. But when it mattered, we were not hitting. And beyond when it mattered, I mean, at some point in time, right now it's looking like MOC couldn't throw a rock into the ocean from the beach. And at some point in time, we've kind of got to get that figured out if we're going to be anything special. We need to get that figured out, or we need to get a rotation figured out to where we can kind of, reduce MOC's role until he gets back comfortable.
Yeah, connecting Dwan Harris and Zeke Mayo to MOC and Jaden Taylor and the rest of our guards as well. That was the biggest staggering difference for me in this game. Kansas got elite guard play, and that was basically all they needed to just run that all day long. You look at Zeke Mayo and Dwan Harris, 41 combined points. Michael O'Connell and Jaden Taylor, they combined for 10. 41-10. Like I said before, their stars were their stars. And you come to expect that of Kansas basketball. And that's even before you get into Hunter Dickinson, who had 21 and 14 boards. On the note of rebounding, I actually thought NC State did a decent job at that, until late in the second half. Tied at half and rebounding against Kansas, that's something that you can hang your hat on when you're looking at ACC play. That's the type of effort that will translate well. And, I guess until it didn't there late in the second half. But there's a lot of small things that you can see in this team, despite struggling right now, that look to be, translatable once you get later on down the road. It's a disappointing loss, not exactly one that's unexpected, but there's certainly still a lot of answers that we're searching for as we inch closer to full-on ACC play. Before we move on, I'm going to get into a quick post-game live ad read. This first one, hold on, let me pull it up, is Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to all of your favorite live events easier than ever before. Gametime Picks filters out all of the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, and you won't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The curation of Gametime Picks makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, possibly even the upcoming Military Bowl. You get a panoramic view of your seat in the app before you buy, and toggling their all-in pricing feature will show you every free upfront, so you receive zero surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and use redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? You already know. It's game time. All right, moving forward here in our Saturday evening post-game live, NC State falls at the hands of the Kansas Jayhawks by a score of 75-60. This was the last of our Big Four non-conference opportunities to boost on to the resume, a whopping 0-4 in those four opportunities. And I think that is a very disappointing point. Like Kenton had already told you, the 5 games in 5 days to get into March Madness, it is nowhere near sustainable. There's a reason that we were the second team to ever pull something off like that. You can't squander your biggest opportunities year in and year out. And that is a very unfortunate, consistent theme with this basketball team. So, while this loss today, to be honest with you, I'm really not that disappointed. You're always disappointed with a loss, but it probably should have been a whole lot worse. And I think that speaks to this team and how they fight. They don't give up and they scratch and claw. That's the type of stuff that will translate later on. But at the end of the day, you still lost a basketball game. So for NC State, you're going to have to win a lot of ACC games in order to build up a resume. You hope that will be enough to get into March Madness. But, man, it's certainly disappointing to go 0-4 in your Big Four opportunities.
ACC basketball is good, but nobody else has Mayo and Harris walking through that door.
Yeah.
That's not happening. And another thing, I've seen this before. Growing up in Detroit, there was a basketball powerhouse in East Lansing by the name of the Michigan State Spartans. And their head coach, Tom Izzo, would always put them through a gauntlet to start the season off. Didn't matter if he had a super senior laden team or a bunch of freshmen out there. He would take them all around the country, and they would get their brains beat out. But the point of it wasn't, hey, we're going to go undefeated or we want to have a great strength of record coming out of this thing. The point of it was for those guys to gel and mesh under fire and heat so that when they got to lesser opponents or when they got to opponents that are middle of the road or that are pretty good, they've seen better. That is the one thing that I will take out of these 4 games and say I'm excited by it, other than the fight, of course, other than the, hey, we're going to keep fighting, scrapping, clawing. It's the fact that I really and truly don't think we're going to see a bunch of better teams than what we've already seen. Will there be some? Yes, sure. Will there be some of these teams that at their highest clip, they're better than what we've seen already? I don't know. There'll be some that are close, just about. but you'll have seen it already. You'll have seen high competition. You'll have seen teams that are going not only to the tournament, but very probably going to be, top 3-4 seeds at worst. So if that is the case, and you talk about, hey, this is what this team is, and they're not necessarily the greatest team we've ever seen, and they have their faults and all that. We've seen this team at their worst when their faults are being exposed. We've seen this team when Michael O'Connell is not hitting, when it's just a struggle for him. We've seen this team when you're demanding more from Brandon Huntley Hatfield. We've seen this team when we've had to tell Ben Middlebrooks, hey, buddy, inside the three-point line. Inside it. He took another one tonight. Stop it, Ben. Inside the three-point line. We've seen it. We've seen it already, so this team knows, hey, it's not that we're unbeatable. It's not that, we're perfect. It is I am learning, or we are learning as a group, this is what it takes to win. And hopefully those lessons are picked up very quickly so this team can do what it needs to do for the rest of the season in order to, like you said, secure a tournament spot.
Something you talked about with MOC, and this also connects to Breon Pass. We got 2 threes from Breon today, and I think there's a chance that he could carve out a little bit more of an expanded role, but I think that is something that Keats should look into. When Michael O'Connell is struggling so much, you can't take away the leadership that he is supposed to have. He is your senior captain. He's your point guard. And I think later in the season, he will kind of come back to where water finds its level. But with him struggling so much, I don't think it'd be a bad idea to see if you can get more out of Breon Pass. I think a lot of the reason that he probably doesn't see the floor is because of the defense, the defensive aspect to it. But if he can knock down a shot relatively consistently, that's something this team really needs right now. And Dontrez Styles is probably still your best 3-point threat. He was 2 of 5 tonight from the perimeter. You're going to have to find additional ways to generate that offense, because what we're seeing right now is just spinning your tires in the mud. You can't rely on Marcus Hill to just attack the basket, 10 to 15 times in a game, because he can do it. But like tonight, he was 3 of 11 against Kansas. That's going to be a tall task with the trees that they have in the middle. But this team is just really struggling so much to generate like a consistent form of offense. We've been talking a lot about the free throws, 12 of 18 tonight. So clearly this is what this team is. They're going to shoot at about a 65 to 69% rate at the free throw line. That is not good. And however, when you talk about these aspects that will translate well in the ACC play, not being able to finish a game by hitting your free throws, that is the definition of being snake bitten. And I think, that definitely raises some eyebrows.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something you said there in terms of Breon Pass not playing because of the defensive side of the deal here, okay? I need us to understand something here. The guards from Kansas shot what percent, Grayson, in terms of Mayo and Harris? They combined for 15 of 25. It's a very round number. 60%. I don't it's not a thing of I'm upset and I'm like, hey, this team is terrible. This team is there's no point in even trying to win, because I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if your argument for Breon Pass not getting minutes is the defensive aspect, how much worse can you get than the other team's guards shooting 60% from the field?
I would agree.
Let the boy get some burn, because right now, let's just be very honest. Has MOC been a plus defender so far this year?
Wouldn't say so.
So if neither guy is going to be a plus defender, then that should be kind of a non sequitur in the conversation of who's getting minutes, what's happening here. To me, it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter. I'm looking at 2 guys that defensively, we got bad and worse. I don't really know what the deal is there. But again, I think that this team, they're figuring out the rotation. They're figuring out all the things. And I'll say this, Keats has earned his leeway for me to not doubt him at the moment. He's earned a year or 2 of leeway to where it's like, all right, now you can get it figured out. At the moment, nobody circles the wagons like Kevin Keats. Let's see if they can get it done this season.
Going to get into a second live ad read here before we finish on some notes about the football team. The second post-game live ad is FanDuel. Tackle NFL action all season long on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in just one singular place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the very same page that you place all of your bets. Head on over to FanDuel.com in order to join today. You'll get started with that $150 in bonus bets if that first pesky $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com in order to get started. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, last couple minutes here of our post-game Saturday night live. Switching gears and talking about some NC State football. We talked all week about how excellent the retention habits have been so far, re-signing nearly the entire wide receiving room. Those efforts have now spilled over into the offensive line. Jacarius Peak and Anthony Carter will both return for NC State in 2025. Really, really, really big deal. I don't think that can be overstated. The play of those two, obviously, often gets overshadowed because offensive linemen do, but Peak was spectacular this year. And I think being how important it's now going to be to build CJ Bailey a fortress in front of him, not just in the passing game, but also to open up lanes for Hollywood Smothers and Kendrick Raphael, whoever else. NC State has to continue to build that wall right in front of CJ Bailey. And I expect that's where the transfer portal efforts will now be targeted. Trafali Price on the defensive line has also announced that he will be returning. I saw Kanoa Vincent, the kicker, will be back. I know Inside Pack Sports has another big announcement later on tonight. I certainly expect that will be a big one as well. This staff is absolutely on a heater. Savage Wolves is on a heater. And when you're returning all of this talent, even from a 6-6 team, that's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, for sure. And just a quick note here in terms of Jacarius Peak. I think he was our best offensive lineman by a mile this year.
I would agree.
I don't think it was particularly close. I know PFF would have him and Zeke Corral pretty close, and this is no disrespect to Zeke. I think he's a good positional blocker. I didn't see anything from him that I thought like, hey, this is like truly like exceptional world-beating stuff the same way that I did from Peak. So that's not to tear that man down. He had a fine year. He had a good year at center. It just I don't think that it is what the type of season that Jacarius Peak had. Now, I will say there are very big announcements on the way. Very big announcements on the way. We're very excited about this team's talent retention. And this is I struggle to kind of quantify how important it is because Grayson and I talked about this off air and on air multiple times in terms of how good can it get when everybody gets another year and CJ gets a whole year as the guy. He gets an entire offseason as, hey, you're the guy, you're going to get the reps, you're going to get the practice, all that stuff as the one. There is no other, there is no, maybe, ho hum, high, all that. We've seen what we've seen from portal quarterbacks. I don't want to see any more paying for portal quarterbacks. We are more than happy with what we got. I'm sorry. People may not agree with me here. I'm completely fine with Wilson and Thomas being your backup. I'm fine with that. I don't want to spend any money on a quarterback in the portal. Keep retaining these guys that, again, every game we played, I walked away from them thinking our wide receivers were a positive, except maybe one. And so, retaining all of these pass catchers and receivers, it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big deal. And again, stay tuned because there may be some more fireworks. Maybe it's defensive, maybe it's offensive, maybe it's in the trenches, maybe it's not. But I can guarantee you there are more important names on the docket.
And I think this also connects to something I talked about the other day. Being that we are so hot on the retention trail right now, that also means that you're going to be at nearly full strength for this bowl game coming up against ECU. Yeah. And ECU's been losing players left and right. In fact, I believe their top linebacker just picked up an offer from NC State. How funny would that be if that goes down before the Military Bowl. But yeah, when you're building the offensive line and retaining guys on the defensive line as well, I think we retain 3 linebackers already. And, I think that something else I said the other day, that's a lot of confidence that these kids have in the defense that they're still going to have regardless if Tony Gibson is here or not. That's a really big deal. And whether it is an in-house guy that will rise up and take that job or they do hire externally, they're going to have a lot to be excited about once they step into that office because there's really talented guys coming back on this defense. And yeah, last point, I kind of keep repeating this trend. NC State retaining all these guys, it's so important for growing together and keeping a solid core. And I think the most impressive part about being able to retain all this is the speed in which they've done it. They've wasted no time picking out which needs to be the biggest priorities in terms of the pass catchers and CJ Bailey, Hollywood Smothers. They didn't play around at all. They didn't wait around for a bigger offer to be floated in by some no-name school. They hammered down, this is what we need to do. This is when we're going to get it done. And it's boom, 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 boom. They've been absolutely killing it. I don't think that can be overstated. So a lot to be excited about. And I don't think that translates into expectations or anything like that. We're still in December, for God's sakes. But the talent cannot be overstated, how important it is to keep this young group together and then watch them flourish next year in 25.
I think it does create expectations, but just expectations for the offense. I think that there are offensive expectations that are now here because defensively, you're losing your coordinator. Cade Fordham, I know he's not going to be back healthy for the start of the season, most likely. I look at the linebacking core and I'm like, hey, it's great to bring Bonner back, great to bring Sean Brown back and company. I was the linebacker core that could not get it done. That's just the reality of what we're looking at there. And then you look at the defensive backfield where you're losing Kaufman, you're losing White, you're losing some important pieces. So I'm not expecting the defense to be much improved next year. I'm just not. That's not something I'm walking into, which means I'm not expecting our record to be exponentially better next year. I'd be surprised. It'd be a pleasant surprise. You're never upset to order 10 nuggets and get a 20-piece, but I'm not expecting this team to be in Charlotte next year. Like, oh, if they don't go to Charlotte, this is a terrible year. It's not where I'm at next year.
Well, I think that'll do it for us. Live from Kansas. Thank you all so much for joining us post-game here. NC State falls to Kansas 75-60. Some good, some bad, but this team's going to have to find a way to fight moving forward. And then, of course, we just talked about NC State football retaining a lot of guys. Another one on the way tonight. There's some confidence. There's some positivity surrounding this program. And that certainly, if absolutely nothing else, that's something you can take with moving forward. Thank you all so much for joining us on here. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, and mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll see you back here for more on Monday. And until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.